The 26th of December, 1996. Boulder, Colorado. The house is still quiet, the remnants of the holiday lingering in the air. Patsy Ramsey steps onto the staircase. She stops. A 3-page handwritten letter rests on the steps. She picks it up. Her eyes track the ink across the pages. It is a ransom note. It claims her 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét, has been taken. The demand is specific, exactly $118,000. The figure hits her with the force of a physical blow. Her mind races, connecting that precise number to the Christmas bonus her husband received just days before. The coincidence is absolute. It is a mirror image of their own financial life, reflected back with lethal intent. She stands on the landing, the paper trembling in her grip. The house feels different now. The walls, the stairs, the shadows, everything that was familiar has turned hostile. She looks toward the empty rooms, searching for a sound, a movement, a sign of her daughter. There is only the silence of the early morning. Panic begins to tighten in her chest, sharp and immediate. She realizes the demand is not just a threat, it is a calculation. Someone knew the numbers. Someone was watching. Patsy turns, her movements jagged. She reaches for the telephone, fingers fumbling against the plastic. She dials the emergency number. Her breath comes in shallow, ragged bursts. When the dispatcher answers, her voice cracks, barely holding the weight of the words. She reports the kidnapping, the demand, the impossible reality of the situation. Every second feels stretched, thin as glass. Minutes later, the first patrol car pulls into the driveway. Headlights sweep across the front of the house, cutting through the darkness. Doors slam. Heavy footsteps crunch against the gravel. 2 officers step onto the porch, their faces set with professional routine. They have no way of knowing that this address is about to become a permanent fixture in the national consciousness. They enter the foyer, their presence shifting the atmosphere of the home instantly. The quiet domestic space is now a staging ground for an investigation that will last decades. They look for signs of a struggle, for clues, for direction. The house remains still, concealing the truth within its walls. The officers move forward, their radios crackling, unaware that they are stepping into a mystery that will never fully leave them. The officers stand in the foyer, but they do not draw a perimeter. They treat the residence as a family tragedy, rather than a crime scene. This is the first fatal error. The front door remains unlocked. Friends and family members arrive, their voices filling the rooms. They walk through the kitchen, the hallways, and the living area, shaking hands and offering support. Each step across the carpet shifts the dust and fibers. Every touch on a surface adds new, irrelevant prints to the existing ones. The house is a sieve. People move with purpose, pacing from room to room, their activity creating a layer of noise and movement that masks the truth. The officers remain focused on the family, listening to accounts, observing the grief, and failing to secure the perimeter. No one stops the flow of visitors. No one marks the floor. The environment is being overwritten in real time. By the time someone suggests searching the basement, the interior of the house has been transformed into a crowded, chaotic landscape. The evidence is no longer pristine. It is buried under a dozen sets of footprints, a blur of motion that renders the scene unreliable from the very first hour. The hallway floor becomes a path of destruction. A visitor paces back and forth, dragging the soles of their shoes over the carpet, grinding invisible fibers into the pile. They lean against a doorframe, palms pressed flat against the wood, effectively erasing whatever residue might have lingered there. The air is thick with the scent of coffee and hurried breath. Every movement is a collision. Someone brushes past a table, knocking a stack of papers askew, and their sleeve sweeps across the surface, smearing the dust patterns that a scanner might have captured. The chaos is not loud. It is steady, rhythmic, and absolute. There is no urgency to preserve the space, only a collective movement toward comfort that acts as a shroud over the truth. By the time the final guest settles into a chair, the integrity of the rooms has vanished. The fingerprints are layered, overlapping, and indistinguishable. The floor patterns are a chaotic web of mismatched treads. The house is no longer a site of inquiry, but a site of interference. The potential for forensic clarity dissolves into a mess of civilian contact, ensuring that when the professionals finally look for answers, they will be fighting against the noise of their own negligence. The suggestion ripples through the room. Search the basement. The decision shifts the focus away from the crowded living space. John Ramsey turns, moving toward the staircase that leads down into the dark. The noise from the main floor begins to fade, replaced by the hollow, rhythmic thud of his own boots on the wooden steps. The air here is different. It is cooler, stagnant, and carries the faint, metallic scent of damp concrete. He descends into the shadows, his hands sliding along the railing, finding only dust. Every step takes him further from the confusion above and deeper into a silence that feels heavy, almost physical. He reaches the bottom and stops. The basement is a maze of boxes and discarded items, a graveyard of forgotten things. He scans the floor, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. He moves past a rack, his shoulder brushing against a shelf, sending a tremor through the structure. At the far end of the room, a heavy door sits flush against the frame. It is closed. He walks toward it, his pace deliberate, his breath hitching in his chest. He stops inches from the wood, staring at the latch. Sensing that the search has reached its end, John wraps his fingers around the cold metal latch. He twists. The mechanism groans, a dry, metallic sound that echoes against the concrete walls. He pulls, but the door is heavy, sticking against the frame until he shifts his weight and jerks it wide. The space beyond is a void of stale air and shadows. He raises his light, the beam slicing through the darkness to hit the floor. The glare reflects off something white. He steps forward, his boots crunching on loose debris. He stops. The light settles on a small, still form wrapped tightly in a white blanket. He drops to his knees. The fabric is pulled taut. He reaches out, his hands hovering over the bundle before he pulls the corner back. The beam reveals the truth in a single, freezing second. Her hands are pulled behind her, bound tight. A strip of duct tape is pressed firmly over her mouth, sealing her expression in place. The hope that had fueled the search for hours disintegrates. She is not hidden. She is not waiting. She is lying motionless on the cold floor, and the silence of the basement is finally, terrifyingly, absolute. John leans closer, his flashlight beam narrowing to the small, pale neck. A makeshift garrote is cinched tight against the skin. It is a crude, brutal construction. A length of cord is looped multiple times, secured by a fragment of wood. He reaches out, his fingers trembling as he traces the handle of the tool. It is a broken paintbrush, the bristles long gone, the handle snapped with force. He recognizes the wood. He knows the set. It belongs to his wife. The air in the storage room turns thin. The implication strikes harder than the sight of the body itself. If the weapon originated from inside, the threat did not come from outside. He pulls his hand back, his skin cold, his breath hitching in the stagnant air. The basement, once a place of frantic searching, now feels like a trap. Every detail of the room, the concrete floor, the boxes, the quiet takes on a new, jagged significance. He stares at the paintbrush handle, the reality of the situation shifting from a stranger's act to a domestic nightmare. The silence is no longer empty. It is heavy with the weight of who was in the house that night. The investigation turned inward as soon as the detectives analyzed the ransom note. 3 pages of handwritten demands, cold and precise, requested exactly $118,000. The detectives checked the financial records. The figure matched the father's Christmas bonus to the exact dollar. The coincidence cut through the room like a blade. Outside the house, the perimeter expanded, but the focus tightened. Neighbors watched as vehicles arrived and departed, turning the property into a stage for public speculation. Every interview conducted by the police sought to reconcile the impossible. The broken paintbrush, the specific ransom amount, the lack of forced entry, the evidence functioned as a closed loop. Reporters gathered at the curb, microphones held high, broadcasting the theory of a perfect family hiding a deadly fracture. The narrative shifted from a search for a missing child to a systematic dismantling of the parents' lives. Investigators walked the halls with notebooks open, checking locks, counting minutes, and measuring the distance between bedrooms. The house, once a private sanctuary, became a site of relentless interrogation. Suspicion hardened into a wall of inquiry. and the story of a tragic kidnapping began to rewrite itself as a domestic mystery. While the detectives built their theory around the ransom note and the financial records, the laboratory results began to push back. Technicians processed the small dark room, moving beyond the obvious. They found a footprint near the point of entry, a boot print that matched no one living in the home. It was a clean, distinct impression left in the dust. The pressure of the suspicion against the parents began to waver. On the small victim, analysts identified biological traces that did not belong to the household. A sample of male DNA was pulled from the fabric of the girl's garments, a profile that existed in no known database. These findings created a sudden, sharp divide in the case. One side of the investigation pointed firmly inward, fueled by the logic of the note and the weapon. The other side pointed toward a phantom, an intruder who had left physical markers behind. The case became a battle of these two narratives. Every piece of data now carried a double meaning. Was it a domestic tragedy disguised as a crime, or a genuine breach by a stranger? The evidence stood in direct conflict, stalling the momentum of the police and leaving the truth fractured, caught between the cold reality of the forensic reports and the persistent theories surrounding the family. The private nightmare expanded into a public spectacle that never dimmed. For years, the family occupied the center of a national obsession, their every movement scrutinized by a lens that refused to look away. They stepped before cameras, their voices tight as they spoke into microphones, pleading for a resolution that remained out of reach. The intensity of the public judgment grew, fueled by headlines and endless speculation. Inside the courthouse, the machinery of justice ground forward with agonizing slowness. A grand jury was impaneled to weigh the evidence, the weight of their decisions pressing down on the lives of those involved. For months, the process promised a turning point, a final verdict that would settle the questions once and for all. Yet, the legal system hit a wall. Prosecutors looked at the files, reviewed the forensic reports, and found the evidence insufficient to move toward a trial. The grand jury dissolved without charges, leaving the family in a state of suspended animation. They were neither exonerated by the law nor convicted by a court, caught in a permanent twilight of suspicion. The cameras remained at their door, and the public continued to demand answers that the evidence could not provide. They lived their days under a cloud that refused to dissipate, trapped in the gap between innocence and the court of public opinion. The decade-long silence shattered in 2006. A man surfaced in Thailand, delivering a detailed confession that claimed responsibility for the tragedy. The news traveled instantly, igniting a global media firestorm that promised to end years of speculation. Reporters swarmed, public interest spiked to a fever pitch, and the investigation suddenly surged with new, urgent energy. Authorities moved with speed, treating the admission as the long-awaited breakthrough. They secured samples to compare against the evidence held in the crime lab. The world watched, waiting for the final word to lock into place. Then, the laboratory results arrived. The DNA profile from the scene did not match the man in custody. The confession, once the focal point of the entire case, disintegrated in an instant. The media frenzy evaporated, leaving behind a hollow silence. The investigators were forced to walk back their leads, and the case file in Boulder was returned to the shelf, no closer to a resolution than it had been a decade prior. The brief surge of hope vanished, replaced by the crushing weight of another dead end. The mystery remained entirely intact, the identity of the person who entered that house still buried in the dark, and the path toward the truth remained as blocked as it had been on the first night. By 2008, the forensic landscape had shifted. Scientists had refined the process of extracting data from microscopic traces, a method known as touch DNA. Experts returned to the items collected from the scene, applying these advanced techniques to samples that had previously been too small or too degraded to analyze. The lab work was methodical and slow, moving away from the focus on human testimony and toward the absolute certainty of the genetic code. As the analysis progressed, a new profile began to emerge from the data. It was not a match for any family member, nor was it linked to anyone previously questioned during the investigation. The results were clear. An unknown male had left his biological signature behind. This was the moment the trajectory of the case changed. For the first time in 12 years, the science provided a hard, physical link to an outsider. The profile stood as a silent witness, detached from the rumors and the accusations that had defined the prior decade. It shifted the investigation away from the internal circle and pointed toward the reality of an external presence. The evidence was no longer speculative. It was anchored in a specific, unique genetic sequence that demanded a name, effectively isolating the trace of an individual who had been present in that room on that night. The report reached the district attorney office with the weight of 12 years of scrutiny. Prosecutors reviewed the findings, weighing the new genetic certainty against the history of the investigation. The conclusion was unavoidable. In a formal shift, the Ramsey family was officially exonerated. The state acknowledged that the physical evidence directly contradicted any theory of internal involvement. For the family, the legal cloud that had defined their lives for over a decade finally dissipated. But the end of the investigation did not bring closure. The exoneration cleared the names of the innocent, yet it left a terrifying void where justice should have been. The profile of the unknown male remained, a digital ghost trapped in a database without a name. Every wall in their home had been breached by suspicion, and even with the legal record corrected, the reality of that night remained unsolved. The family lived in the aftermath of a nightmare that had been validated by science but remained unpunished by the law. The blank space in the case file was not just a technicality. It was a constant reminder of the individual who had entered the house and vanished. They were free of the accusation, but they remained tethered to the mystery of a man who had never been found. Decades after the event, the cycle of the investigation has not stopped for John Ramsey. Now, in his late 70s, he occupies his time not with rest, but with the active pursuit of the unknown. He maintains a constant line of communication with authorities, pressing them to re-examine the evidence with every new advancement in forensic science. He tracks the progress of the case, demanding that the DNA profile be run against updated national databases. He spends his days reviewing the findings, meeting with legal experts, and refusing to accept the stillness of an unresolved file. For him, the passage of time does not equate to the fading of the case. He views the remaining physical traces as the only path forward, a tangible connection to the night that changed his family. He pushes for the application of new techniques to older, previously untestable samples, seeking that one definitive match that has remained just out of reach for 28 years. Each year, he waits for the call that would finally provide a name to the profile. He remains a father standing in the center of a long-standing silence, refusing to let the search for justice lose its momentum while the evidence still sits in the queue, waiting for its match. In an office in Boulder, a single case file rests on a desk. It is the center of a gravity that has held for 28 years. Inside, the documents are organized, the reports are cataloged, and the evidence is secured. Yet the primary question remains unanswered. A digital profile of an unknown male sits in a queue, waiting for a match that has not arrived. Every few months, the system cycles through new databases, searching for a name to link to the physical traces recovered from the house. But the computer returns only silence. Outside, the world has moved on. But inside that folder, the events of the 26th of December, 1996, are preserved in precise detail. The investigation is not closed, yet it is stalled in a state of permanent anticipation. JonBenét remains a figure fixed in the memory of a community, a girl whose life was interrupted in the quiet of a midnight hour. The basement of the house, once a place of everyday storage, holds the final, unrecovered truth of that Christmas night. The doors are locked, the house has passed into new hands, and the physical space has changed, but the mystery is anchored there. The answer rests somewhere in the dark, buried beneath decades of speculation, waiting for the one piece of information that will finally break the silence.